The shrill bell signaling the end of class ripped through the air. I jolted, my head snapping up as I scanned my surroundings. A classroom? How could I be in classroom? Wasn't I just in a car crash? Why am I here? Was I reborn? The scene before me was achingly familiar. The massive whiteboard was covered in calculus formulas. Miss Albbright, my old homeroom teacher, her hair not yet threaded with gray, was still holding her textbook and a piece of chalk, dragging the lesson out past the bell as usual. My classmates were already stirring, a low buzz filling the room as they started to stand up, impatient to leave. As I took into familiar sights, a flood of tears blur my vision. A tidal wave of emotions, fury, hatred, regret, relief crashed over me. Through my watery eyes, a single thought screamed in my mind. I'm back. I've been reborn. A sharp pain lanced through my head. The memory of the crash was still vivid. I was in the driver's seat, a piece of twisted metal from the guardrail punching through my chest. I was coughing up blood, staring in disbelief at Leah Robertson beside me. In the passenger seat, her own face was a mask of blood, but her eyes burned with anal-consuming hatred. Ethan, she had hissed, her voice a venomous whisper. It will never, ever forgive you. My name is Ethan Miller and I have been reborn. Reborn into my senior year of high school, just 1 month before the final exams that would decide our futures. All right, everyone, settle down. Albright's voice cut through my thoughts. We only have 1 month until finals. Tomorrow is the last big practice exam, and I expect every one of you to give it your all. Class dismissed. Ethan, could you come my office for a moment? She had noticed my strange behavior. Wiping the tears from my face, I walked to her office. Seeing her so young and vibrant again, the way she was before the years of stress wore her down, made my chest ache. She handed me a tissue, her eyes full of genuine worry. Ethan, what's wrong? Why were you crying? I shook my head. It's nothing, Ms. Albbright, just feeling the pressure lately, I guess. She gave me a concerned look. It's that time of year. A lot of students are feeling the stress, but you have to take care of yourself, Ethan. Learn how to let some of that pressure go. I nodded. The familiar lecture a strange comfort. Ms. Albbright had been my teacher for 3 years, a tireless and dedicated educator. She had been a vibrant woman in her late 20s, but the job had already begun to stoop her shoulders slightly. In my previous life, the immense strain led to a lung cancer diagnosis in her 40s, forcing her into an early retirement that cut her career short. This time, I watched as she rushed out of the office at the sound of the next period's bell, not even taking a sip from the water bottle on her desk. Ms. Albbright, I called out. Take care of yourself. She glanced back, surprised. A faint smile touched her tired face. She nodded and hurried away this time. I hope you'll be okay. Things had to be different this time. The bell was ringing. I needed to get back to class. Ethan, a voice stopped me in the hallway. I turned to see Jason Tate standing a few feet away, a basketball tucked under his arm. He was tall with the kind of effortlessly handsome facet that belonged on a magazine cover. He was our school's golden boy. He walked right up to me. Hey Miller, you and Lee Robertson are neighbors, right? And there it was, the first thread of the tangled web of love and resentment from me past life about to be woven all over again. Back then, Leah's family and mine were next-door neighbors. We were childhood friends, practically inseparable, walking to and from school together every single day. My teenage heart harbored a quiet secret crush on her, but I was too timid to ever say it out loud. I poured all those unspoken feelings into a diary instead. But Leah, in her innocent and romantic way, only ever saw me as her best friend, her closest companion. So, in my last life, when Jason Tate handed me a love letter to give to her, my meek conflict of herself didn't refuse. But I didn't give it to her either. I hid it. The crush of final exams and college applications made us both forget about it. Then one day after graduation, Leah was over at my house and stumbled upon the letter in my backpack. At the same time, she found a diary in my desk drawer. My deepest secrets were laid bare before her. The result wasn't understanding or compassion. It was a look of utter disgust and contempt mixed with a bitter resentment that she had never received the letter from the boy she secretly liked. This time, history was repeating itself. The image of Leah's bloody face, her eyes burning with hatred, flashed through my mind again. I didn't even glance at the envelope Jason held out. I just turned and walked straight into the classroom. This life was going to be different. What the hell? Jason's angry voice carried into the room. Who does that guy think he is? A few of my classmates looked at me with curiosity, but I ignored them. This time, I would live for myself and for the people who truly love me. After school, Ms. Albbright kept us late again, patiently going over last-minute tips for the exam. By the time she finally let us go, the sky was completely dark. The campus was nearly deserted with only the lonely glow of the hallway lights illuminating the path for the last few students. Senior year was a relentless grind. Even with the knowledge of a past life, the pressure was still suffocating. I dragged my tired body to the student parking lot. In the sparse light of a flickering lamppost, I saw a boy hand a girl a letter. She blushed shyly, tucking it deep in her backpack. Then they walked away from the school together, laughing and talking. A girl's heart is a world of poetry. She seemed incredibly happy, giggling and nodding as the boy teased her under the moonlight. She was as beautiful as a blooming rose, so much so that the moon itself seemed to dim, hiding its face behind a thin veil of clouds. I unlocked my bike, pushed it out from the rack, and started the ride home alone. For the first time in 3 years of high school, I was going home by myself. It was always me waiting for Lee or Leah waiting for me. Through wind and rain, no matter how late or how cold, the two of us were constant, riding our bikes to and from school. Side by side, I pedaled lightly, cruising under the dim streetlights, humming the melody of a popular song. Who is it riding drunk on a horse? Is Scream, looking to the ends of the earth. In the classroom, everyone was hunched over their desks, the frantic scratching of pencils filling the silence. Having lived this once before, a lot of the material was crystal clear in my mind. The test was, for the most part, easy. Suddenly, the sound of running footsteps echoed from the hallway, startling everyone. We all looked up, surprised to see a boy and a girl sprinting past the classroom door, holding hands. The proctors frowned, stepping out of their classrooms to see who was causing such a disturbance. I glanced up just in time to see Leah and Jason, their hands intertwined, racing past the doorway with exhilarating spt. Jason had a wild, carefree grin on his face. Leah's cheeks were flushed with a mix of excitement and nervousness. They ran the length of the hall and disappeared down the stairwell. I stared after them, shocked. In that moment, Leah seemed like a complete stranger. I shook my head and forced myself to look back down at my test. A stone had been dropped into the placid lake of my composure, sending ripples outward. An unfamiliar irritation began to bubble up inside me. I raced through the remaining questions and, to the surprise of the proctor and my classmates, turned to my exam booklet early. Walking along the tree-lined path that cut through campus, my racing heart slowly began to calm down. What's wrong with me? I asked myself. In my previous life, I had gotten into an Ivy League university, gone on to get my master's and my PhD. I'd published a dozen papers in major scientific journals and had become a tenure professor at a young age. I gave lectures all over the world, standing before government officials and academic elites with total confidence. I was a master of my own emotions. A mountain could crumble in front of me, and I wouldn't flinch. And yet, today, a simple high school practice exam had managed to completely unnerve me. I took a deep breath, trying to absorb the peacefulness of the campus, the birdsong and the dappled sunlight filtering through the leaves. The high school campus was beautiful. Even after traveling the world, I felt that no scenery could compare to the simple beauty of this place. Time flew by. In the blink of an eye, final exams were over. At the senior send-off party, my classmates were dancing and singing, releasing all the pressure that had been building for so long. I sat alone in the audience, watching the performances on stage, feeling a quiet sense of satisfaction. In the months since that practice exam, my life had been incredibly stable. I went to and from school alone, studied alone, and took my exams alone. I had successfully navigated the end of high school. I felt a sense of peace I hadn't known in a long time. But still, something felt like it was missing. Ethan, a familiar voice called from behind me. I turned and there was Leah, standing a short distance away in a beautiful, sweet-looking party dress. And beside her, of course, was Jason. Leah walked closer. Ethan, there you are. It feels like it's been forever. Since the day of the practice exam, I had barely seen her. Jason had apparently been picking her up and dropping her off every day. I simply nodded. Yeah, well, Who's this?" Jason chimed in. "Leah, honey, you're not going to introduce me?" He sauntered up beside her, casually wrapping an arm around her slim waist in a very possessive gesture. His tone was a clear challenge. Leah blushed, but didn't push his arm away. "This is Ethan Miller. He's a good friend of mine." After the introduction, she turned back to me, her blush deepening. "Ethan, this is Jason Tate. He's my boyfriend." Jason flashed a bright, charming smile. "Nice to meet you, Ethan," but his eyes cold, full of disdain and provocation. I ignored him. My gaze stayed fixed on Leah, whose face was now the color of a ripe apple. "When's your performance?" In my past life, Leah had performed a contemporary dance piece that a few students had filmed and posted online. It went viral, stunning thousands of viewers. For a while, it was even a trending topic. I'd heard some talent agencies tried to sign her, but she turned them all down. Seeing that I had completely ignored him, Jason's expression soured. He scoffed. "Seems like our friend Ethan isn't much of a people person. All work and no play makes for a dead end, you know." Leah's face flushed with anger. She smacked his hand away. "What are you talking about? Ethan is not like that at all." Jason feigned injury, clutching his arm dramatically. "Ow, help! Somebody call 911. My girlfriend is trying to kill me." Leah's face turned even redder. She playfully lunged at him, but Jason caught her easily, pulling her into his arms. Then, right there in front of everyone, he leaned down and kissed her. Hard. The move stunned the students around us. Sure, it was the end of senior year and people were letting loose, but nobody was being that bold in the middle of a school-sponsored event. After a long moment, Leah struggled and pushed him away. "What are you doing?" She looked genuinely angry. Jason licked his lips, his eyes full of possessiveness. He seemed to realize he had gone too far and laughed it off. "Sorry, couldn't help myself. Oh hey, the basketball team is having their own celebration. I gotta go. I'll come get you later, babe." With that, he was gone. Leah fanned her red cheeks, trying to compose herself, then sat down in an empty seat next to me. On stage, two students were singing a duet. "I love you, my Juliet. I'm willing to become your Romeo." "So, Ethan, how do you think you did on your finals?" The moment Jason had pulled Leah into his arms, I had turned back to the stage. I kept my eyes on the performance, my voice calm. "I think I did well. After all, I've lived this once before. I'm confident I'll score even higher this time around. What about you?" I finally turned from the stage to look at her. Her cheeks were still flushed. She leaned in close, her voice a conspiratorial whisper. "I don't think I did that well." I looked at her carefully applied makeup. In my past life, she had gotten into an Ivy League school. She'd gone on to earn her master's, then her PAAAHDAADDDDHEHE. Later, she joined a Fortune 500 company and became a high-level executive in just a few years. So, when she said she hadn't done well, I figured it was just false modesty, but then her next words left me speechless. I didn't finish the essay for English. I skipped the last few problems on the math final. I totally bombed the listening section for Spanish. She counted off her failures on her fingers. I ran the numbers. I should still have a good enough score to get into UVA. Why? The word burst out louder than I intended. Leah looked at me, a flicker of surprise in her eyes before answering. "So I could go to the same college as Jason." Her face lit up. "We made a pact. We're both going to the University of Virginia. We're going to see the campus in the spring together." I stared at her at the pure, unfiltered happiness on her face. I opened my mouth, but no words came out. For the rest of the time she sat beside me, I stayed silent. She was the only one talking, painting a vivid picture of the beautiful future she imagined. Soon, it was time for her performance. She said a quick goodbye and went up on stage. I quietly watched her dance, but for some reason, this time, her performance was missing something, that spark of life, that soulfulness she'd had before. My experience from a past life gave me the perspective to notice the difference. At the end of her dance, Jason came onto the stage and presented her with a massive bouquet of red roses. The gesture sent the party into a frenzy. The atmosphere reached its peak. All my classmates were swept up in the wild celebration, but it felt like this party had nothing to do with me anymore. I pushed my bike out of the rack and slowly walked across the campus grounds. Just before I reached the main gate, I turned back for one last look at the jubilant crowd in the quad. Then I got on my bike and rode away. My scores were the highest in the school, the city, the entire state. MIT, the top-ranked university in the country, contacted me immediately. Without a second thought, I accepted their offer. My old high school went all out, hanging up banners and posters with my name and photo everywhere, celebrating their star student, but none of it had anything to do with me. The day after my scores were released, I was flown out to Boston and immediately began my university coursework. A short time later, I was already in the lab, working with my faculty advisor. My starting point in this life was much higher, and I was much busier. I chose the same research focus as my last life, physics. At MIT, I truly understood what it meant to be surrounded by geniuses. Even with knowledge from a previous life, if I slacked off for even a moment, I risked falling behind. So I worked harder, more diligently than ever before. In the eyes of others, I was a genius in my own right. In a single semester, I completed the equivalent of 4 years of undergraduate coursework and began publishing papers in scientific journals. I delved into multiple fields of physics, developing a deep understanding that rivaled professors who had been in the field for decades. During that first semester of freshman year, I was so busy I seemed to forget everything else. My world consisted only of books and experiments. The outside world might as well not have existed. Only the weekly phone calls with my parents gave me a small window into what was happening back home. Thanks to the scholarship money I received, their financial situation had improved significantly. They were both healthy, and in every call, they just told me to focus on my studies. One day, after finishing a long experiment on terahertz electron beams, my white-haired professor pulled me aside. "Ethan," he said, his French accent still thick even after all his years in the U.S., "the results of this experiment are excellent. We can call it success for now." I let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. The experiment had consumed me for over a month, and today, we finally had a relatively complete result. Now, other teams would need to verify our findings, which meant, as a researcher, I could finally take a break. The professor looked at me. "Ethan, winter break starts today. Christmas is just around the corner." He clapped me on the shoulder. "You should use this time to rest." "I love the American Christmas season," I said. "So festive, huh? I love this country." It felt like waking from a dream. Somehow, I had completely lost track of time. It was almost Christmas. I shook my groggy head and glanced at my professor. "Professor, do you get holidays in France?" He was a renowned physicist who had lived in the U.S. for over a decade, a bona fide American now. "But still, I think the American holiday season is more fun." Hith. I chuckled. We chatted aimlessly for a few more minutes as I changed out of my lab coat. Just as I was about to leave, the professor called out to me, "Ethan." I turned back, puzzled by his tone. There was something in his expression I couldn't quite read. He hesitated, then said gently, "Use the break to really rest. You don't have to push yourself so hard all the time. Relax a little, my friend." I smiled. "If I don't push myself, I'll never catch up to those geniuses." His expression turned serious. "Ethan, you are one of those geniuses. My God, you have no idea the magnitude of what you've accomplished. The others can't hold a candle to you. For them, being a genius is just the price of admission to be in the same room as you." I shrugged, pretending like it didn't mean much. "All right, Professor. I'm heading out. See you next year." "Go on, kid. See you next year." That same day, I went back to my dorm, packed a couple of changes of clothes, and bought a ticket for the Acela Express home. The train was fast and smooth. I found a window seat, put on my headphones, and scrolled through the news on my phone. "Ethan Miller," a voice cut through my music. I looked up quickly and pulled off my headphones. "Sophia Reed? What are you doing here?" Standing in the aisle was Sophia Reed, a classmate from my high school graduating class. We were never close, never even in the same classes, but we'd crossed paths a few times. Her final scores were excellent too. She hadn't made it into MIT, but she was attending another prestigious university in Boston. She sat down in the empty seat beside me. What a coincidence! "I can't believe I ended up in the same car as our valedictorian." I smiled at her. "Don't tease me, Sophia. At my school, there are hundreds of valedictorians." It was true. When I got to MIT, I realized how little titles like valedictorian really meant. The truly exceptional students were scouted and admitted without even needing to apply. I hadn't been lying to my professor. If I didn't work my tail off, I'd fall behind fast. Sophia and I chatted the entire ride. Mostly she talked. I listened. That's when I found out we were the only two from our class studying in Boston. I'd never paid much attention to where my classmates ended up, either in this life or the last. I had no idea she'd been so close. When the train pulled into the station, we exchanged numbers. As we were about to go our separate ways, she turned and asked, "There's a reunion for our class in 3 days for everyone who went to college. Are you going?" I opened my mouth to answer, but before I could, the crowd swept her away toward the exit. Well, I thought, we have each other's numbers now. I could just text her. I hailed an Uber from the street. Just as I got in the car, my phone lit up with a message from Sophia. "The reunion is at our old high school. You're coming, right?" A winking emoji followed. I smiled for no real reason and typed back, "Yeah, I'll be there. Yay!" She replied, along with a cute celebratory emoji. "Mom," I called out as I pushed open the front door. Clang! Crash! A clatter of pots and pans echoed from the kitchen. My mom rushed out, still in her apron and oven mitts. "Ethan, you're home." She grabbed my hands, her face glowing, eyes crinkled with joy. Moments later, my dad stepped out from the living room, arms crossed, but his eyes were proud. "Why? Didn't you tell us you were coming?" He grunted. "Honestly, this kid, so impulsive." Then he added, "What are you waiting for? Get inside. Your mother's already made dinner." Mom gave him a playful glare. "Oh, listen to you. The boy just got home." Then she turned back to me, her voice softer. "Come on, honey. Let's go inside. The food's all ready." I nodded, following her into the dining room. After dinner, we sat and talked for a bit before I headed upstairs to shower and unwind. Though I'd been gone for months, my room looked spotless. My mom cleaned it every week. I walked over to my desk, pulled out a small key, and unlocked the bottom drawer. Inside lay a thick gray diary. Though kept safe, a fine layer of dust had settled over the cover. The pages were beginning to yellow. I gently brushed it off and began flipping through the pages. Seeing my old, messy handwriting brought a smile to my face. I'd started keeping a diary in middle school. I didn't write every day, especially not in high school, but I always made sure to record the important things. The diary was long. At some point, I'm not sure when, Leah's name began appearing on every other page. Walked to school together. Walked home together. 2 kids, carefree and happy. My bike broke down today, so you gave me a ride on yours. Your mom made extra lasagna, so you snuck a piece out for me. You had detention today, so I waited for you. I got sent to the principal's office tomorrow, so you waited for me. The entries were full of little insignificant things, but each one radiated affection. Toward the end, my feelings for her came through more openly, more clearly, like I wasn't even trying to hide it anymore. Looking back now, I don't know why I felt the need to write it all down. I read slowly, deep into the night, until I'd finished the entire book. Then, out of nowhere, a strange restlessness came over me. I set the diary down, got up, and gently pushed open my window. The cold winter air hit me like a blade. I took in a sharp breath, held it, then exhaled, releasing a white plume of mist into the night. The freezing air coursed through my lungs, like it was carrying away the unease inside me. It was brutally cold. I rubbed my hands together and shut the window before another gust swept in. Sitting back at my desk, I gave the diary one last look, then slipped it back into the drawer and locked it. Maybe in this life, I wouldn't write in a diary again. In my past life, after graduation, I had started writing in it again. One afternoon, Leah had snuck into my room. She'd found the entry I was in the middle of writing. She'd also found the love letter from Jason, the one I had carelessly tossed aside. After that day, she began pulling away. Every time she looked at me, her eyes were filled with something harsh, something bitter. "You're disgusting, Ethan. I don't like you." "Not at all." She didn't stop. "Writing in a diary is your business. But don't you dare write about me in it. It's sick. There's no chance for us ever. Please just stop fantasizing about me." "Thank you." I had stood frozen in my room the entire afternoon, feeling like a monster. This life, I went straight to Boston after my finals. I never wrote in that diary again. Leah and Jason had gone on a trip right after graduation. They never had the chance to sneak into my room. 3 days later, I stood once more in the cafeteria of my old high school. The place I'd spent 3 years of my life. Not many people came to the reunion, maybe a dozen. But Ms. Albbright had made a special trip just to see her old students. She looked even more tired than I remembered. Leah came alone. She sat in the corner, quiet and distant. Her old spark, that fire in her eyes, it was gone. Now her eyes were wide, empty. There was an exhaustion buried deep inside them. During the reunion, people chatted freely. When it was Leah's turn to share what she'd been up to, she barely got out a few words before falling silent. The way everyone looked at her was laced with a mix of pity and schadenfreude. Sophia, with a small, knowing smile on her lips, said, "Leah, our resident true love angel, what brings you here all alone? Where's your other half?" The story of how Leah had thrown her finals for Jason had spread like wildfire after graduation. At the time, she was a campus legend. When she walked through the halls, people looked at her with a blend of envy, admiration, and jealousy. But now, just a few months later, those same looks had curdled into something closer to mockery and pity. Faced with Sophia's taunt, Leah barely managed a bitter smile. After the main part of the reunion, Ms. Albbright was the only one who walked over to Leah. She took her hand and spoke to her softly. In the end, our old teacher walked away with a heavy, helpless sigh. I didn't get a chance to talk to Leah at all. My classmates were too enthusiastic, each one eager to share their life story. By the time things were winding down, I got a call from the principal. When I finished the meeting with him and a few other administrators, the reunion was already over, and it had been a real meeting, not just a casual conversation. The principal and board members wanted me to return every year to give speeches to students. They even wanted to publish a book under my name. And, of course, they hoped I'd make a generous donation to my alma mater. A long list of requests. In the end, I only agreed to give one speech a year. I politely declined the rest. For someone who had lectured all over the world in a previous life, this was child's play. After politely turning down the principal's request to stay and chat longer, I rode my bike home alone. The winter cold before the holidays always felt especially biting. The wide street was almost empty. Then suddenly, up ahead, a familiar figure appeared. I pedaled faster and pulled up beside Sophia. Her nose was red from the cold. "What are you doing out here?" I asked. "Waiting for you, of course," Sophia said, rubbing her hands together and breathing out a puff of mist. I was stunned for a second, then laughed. "Well then, let's go." On that deserted street, Sophia and I rode our bikes home slowly, side by side, just like Leah and I used to do so many years ago. Over the next 4 years, I poured nearly all of my time into research, and the name Ethan Miller became well known throughout the academic world. Of course, I wasn't famous to the general public, but in the world of top scientists, I was considered a legend. During those 4 years, Sophia Reed, who was studying in the same city, became my girlfriend. You couldn't call our relationship wildly passionate, but we deeply understood and respected one another. Sophia's studies were demanding, and we supported each other's ambitions without ever getting in each other's way. After 4 years, Sophia graduated and got into a master's program at MIT. Once we were at the same school, we spent more time together. We often had dinner, walked around campus, and on beautiful evenings would sometimes grab our IDs and go out to catch a movie. The high school reunions continued every year, but I never attended, partly because I was always busy, and partly because I had the feeling that everyone who went had some kind of ulterior motive, and that wasn't my scene. Sophia, however, went every time. And each time she came back, she'd fill me in on what happened, who was studying abroad, who was dating whom. She'd share all the gossip with the energy of breaking news, like it was life or death. It was through Sophia that I learned what had happened to Leah. At the end of their freshman year, Leah and Jason broke up. Jason had started seeing an older, richer, and more beautiful student. As soon as he got to college, he left Leah. She found out, and after a huge public fight and many tearful attempts to win him back, he dumped her coldly and heartlessly. She fell into a deep depression and had to take a year off school. It took a long time for her to recover enough to return, but even then, her mental state remained fragile. In the end, she never managed to graduate. She left with nothing but a certificate of attendance. After struggling to find a job, she moved back to our hometown and became a cashier at a local supermarket. As for Jason, after graduating from college, he was apparently taken in by a wealthy older woman, but rumor had it he developed some kind of serious illness. No one really knew what became of him. After my undergrad studies, I was accepted directly into the PAAAHDAADDDDHEHE program. At my professor's request, I also started teaching undergraduate classes. Sophia finished her master's and became a lecturer at a university in Boston, earning a great salary. We both had busy careers. In our free time, we encouraged one another We were each walking our own paths and never became obstacles for each other. I was deeply grateful for Sophia. To me, this was the ideal relationship. No stifling drama, no wild arguments. We had our ambitions, and we supported one another without ever becoming burdens. One day, while I was guiding a group of students through an experiment, my professor called out, "Ethan, come here for a moment." I looked at him, then turned to my students. "All right, everyone, continue with the simulation as planned. Bring me your final results when you're done." "I'll step out for a minute." "Sure thing, Ethan," they replied. I walked over to the professor, and he immediately pulled me out into the hallway. He pointed at the sky, where fireworks were exploding in dazzling bursts. "Ethan, look. Aren't the fireworks beautiful?" I looked at him, an excited child's wonder on his face, while mine stayed weary. "So, Professor, you called me out here just to watch fireworks?" He slung his arm around my shoulders. "Of course not, Ethan. You need a break. You've been working non-stop for 3 days and nights. You haven't even closed your eyes." I blinked. Had it really been that long? After being reborn, I found I had an almost supernatural energy. I could go 3 days without sleep and still feel fine. The professor went on, "It's Christmas again. You should use this time to take your girlfriend home." "Wife," I corrected him. One night after watching a movie, Sophia had a spontaneous idea. The next day, she dragged me to City Hall, and we got our marriage license. The professor grinned. "Well done, kid." Thinking about it, since we were officially married, it was probably time to take Sophia home to meet my parents. I brought it up to her, and to my surprise, she agreed right away. When we arrived, my parents had prepared a huge feast. My mom was especially thrilled, holding Sophia's hands, her smile so wide her eyes nearly vanished. During dinner, my dad brought over a large dish of lasagna. "Take this over to Leah's parents for me." I took the dish out of habit. In both this life and the last, our two families always shared what we made. If my family made lasagna, we'd send some over. If their family baked a cake, they'd bring over a slice. It was a tradition we'd kept for years. We were just good neighbors. Nobody thought anything of it. When we were kids, it was always Leah and me running back and forth between our houses. Now that I was away at school, my dad usually did it. I walked up to the Robertsons' front door. Just as I was about to knock, a woman with a weary face stepped out from the back of the house. "Mrs. Robertson," I called. "My mom made lasagna. I brought some over for you." As the figure stepped out from the dim interior into the porch light, I was startled. It wasn't Mrs. Robertson. It was Leah. She was wearing an apron. Her face was lined with exhaustion. There were already strands of white in her hair. At first glance, she looked like a middle-aged woman. I had completely mistaken her. I gave an awkward laugh. "Oh, Leah, it's you. Sorry, I didn't recognize you at first. I brought over some lasagna." Leah's dull, cloudy eyes slowly seemed to recognize me. A flicker of light sparked in them, but it vanished just as quickly. She stepped aside. "My mom's in the back. Come in." I nodded and stepped inside. I don't know if it was just my imagination, but Mrs. Robertson seemed. She looked like she had aged more in this life than in the last. "Mrs. Robertson, I brought over some lasagna," I said, stepping into the kitchen where she stood over the stove. When she saw me, a smile instantly bloomed on her tired face. "Ethan, you're here. It's been so long. Come, sit down in the dining room." I placed the lasagna on the counter. I had only intended to drop it off and leave right away, but I hesitated. Then I walked into the dining room and sat down. Mr. Robertson was there too. He lit up the moment he saw me and immediately started making a pot of tea. "Mr. Robertson, please don't go to any trouble," I said quickly. "I just came to drop this off. Dinner's already waiting at my house." He shot me a mock glare. "We're about to eat here too. You could just eat with us." I gave a weak smile and stayed seated. Mr. and Mrs. Robertson had watched me grow up. They only had one child, Leah, and they'd always treated me like a second son. I'd had dinner at their house more times than I could count. It was the same at my place. My parents only had me, and they treated Leah like their own daughter. Sometimes my dad would buy two of the same toy. My mom would break a cookie in half to share. Our two families had always been as close as one. The water in the kettle began to boil, and the tea leaves quickly unfurled. As Mr. Robertson prepared the tea, he made small talk, asking me lots of questions, and I answered all of them truthfully. In both lifetimes, I'd always had immense respect for them. After a few questions about my work, he hesitated, then asked tentatively, "Ethan, you've done so well in your studies, and your career is stable now. Have you thought about when you might get married?" I sighed internally, then feigned a look of sudden realization. "Oh, Mr. Robertson, I completely forgot to tell you I'm already married. My wife's at my house right now. I'll bring her over to meet you sometime, Mr." Robertson was visibly stunned. From the kitchen, a loud clatter rang out. After a long moment, Mrs. Robertson came in with an awkward smile on her face. I stood up. "Mr. and Mrs. Robertson, dinner really is waiting for me. My wife's at home. I should get back." Without waiting for a response, I turned to leave. Just as I passed through the doorway, I came face to face with Leah. She wore the same stunned expression as her parents. I gave her a small, polite smile and walked out without looking back. In our last life, the debt between us was paid the moment you grabbed the steering wheel in that wreck with that piece of metal in my chest. In this life, we go our separate ways. To each their own. Back at home, my parents adored Sophia. She had them both laughing through dinner. The whole family seemed to be basking in a warm, happy glow, but maybe I was the only one who noticed it, that flicker of regret buried deep in my parents' eyes. And no matter how you look at it, getting married without telling your parents is the kind of thing that gets you an earful anywhere. Fortunately, Sophia's parents had a good impression of me. After a brief conversation, they sent me home to talk to my own parents so both families could start discussing the wedding plans and formalities. As I was walking up to my front door, Leah stopped me. She looked at me with those same cloudy, tired eyes and asked in a low, tentative voice, "Ethan, back in senior year, that love letter from Jason, were you planning to hide it from me?" In the last life, I did hide it. In this reborn life, I refused to be a messenger. I shook my head. No. Hearing that, a wave of disappointment passed over her face. She hesitated, then said, "I had a dream." "A dream?" I looked at her, confused. Leah didn't seem to notice my expression. She continued, almost like she was speaking to herself, "In the dream, you hid Jason's letter. I wasn't distracted during my finals, so I did really well. I got into a top university. But I was horrible to you. I blamed you. I resented you for hiding the letter." Her voice trembled. "At the end of the dream, I heard that Jason had died. I lost control. I grabbed the steering wheel of your car. I caused a crash." I listened quietly as she spoke, recounting the dream. Finally, her gaze focused back on me. "It's a strange dream, isn't it, Ethan?" I looked at her, my voice flat. "It was just a dream." Leah nodded slowly. "Yes," she said, her tone hollow. "It was just a dream." I stepped past her, heading toward my front door. "Ethan, do you write in a diary?" She suddenly called out. "Yes," I said, leaving her with that single word. I walked inside and gently closed the door behind me, but just before the latch clicked shut, I saw her. Her face was streaked with tears. She was covering her mouth, her body racked with silent, heart-wrenching sobs. "The cause I sowed in the last life by hiding that letter I reaped in the crash. I paid my debt. This life, we are separate. At peace." A song like a poem, a scene like a painting. What can't be let go is the lingering memory. You once asked if I was afraid. I couldn't resist that single moment. Like sun, like rain, 1,000 threads of love and hate. I once asked when you would say yes. I couldn't bear the praise. Not rushed, not slow, calling out from the other side of the mountain, whether you hear it or not, even as black hair turns to gray. No sorrow, no joy. I will just wait for you in my silence.